At the beginning of the story, we are introduced to a man named Yossi Ginsberg, an adventurous soul who loves traveling, which is the primary reason he finds himself in Bolivia. From this location, he formulates an ambitious plan to enter the heart of the Amazon forest, a vast and extremely dense jungle known for its unforgiving nature. During the early stages of his journey, specifically while crossing a river on a boat, he encounters another traveler named Marcus. Marcus is a teacher by profession with a very interesting personality, and the two quickly strike up a connection. Through this new acquaintance, Marcus introduces Yossi to an old friend of his named Kevin, a photographer and seasoned traveler who has explored almost all of South America. The next day, as Yossi walks through the local market, a man calls out to him from behind, asking if he is American. Yossi immediately corrects him, stating that he is from occupied Palestine, not America. This initial interaction leads to a conversation where the stranger reveals that deep inside the jungle, there are still tribes who know nothing about the outside world, and conversely, the world knows nothing about them. He describes it as a hidden world and offers to take Yossi there if he is interested, even showing a photo of himself standing with the tribesmen to prove his claims. Yossi becomes convinced that the man is telling the truth and rushes back to tell Marcus and Kevin everything. Excitedly, he explains that they have a rare chance to see a world no one has ever seen before, but Marcus is immediately skeptical. He questions how Yossi can trust a stranger, wondering how this man knows about a tribe that remains a secret to the rest of the world and what his true motives were for being there. Yossi counters by explaining that the man, whose name is Carl, went there to search for gold and claims the river is full of it. He even promised that when they return, all their bags will be filled with gold. Despite this, Kevin and Marcus remain unconvinced, so Yossi insists that they at least meet the man once before making a final decision. The next day, the three of them meet Carl, and through his charisma and detailed stories, he finally convinces all of them to join him. Now all four are ready for a journey that will lead them to a civilization the world has never seen, completely isolated from humanity. Since the journey promises to be long and arduous, they begin preparing by buying necessary supplies. Outside one of the shops, the three friends are studying a map of the Amazon when Carl arrives. He dismissively tells them that the map tells them nothing about the actual jungle, advising them that in the wild, they must always follow the river because the river is their best friend. The next day, the group begins their expedition. After traveling for the entire day, they set up camp for the night. During this downtime, Carl explains to Kevin that the tribe they are going to meet might seem like people living in ancient times, resembling the Stone Age, but they are actually very smart and far ahead of modern people in their own way. He claims they know the true meaning of life, want nothing from the modern world, and are completely free. The following day, they continue deeper into the jungle, and Carl warns them that it will rain soon. Kevin looks up at the sky and is confused, noting that there isn't a single cloud in sight. However, within minutes, heavy rain begins to pour, forcing them to take shelter for the night. Carl promises that tomorrow he will feed them real food because they are scheduled to finally reach the tribe. True to his word, after a long journey the next morning, they finally arrive at the village. It turns out that everyone in the tribe knows Carl, and seeing him with guests makes the villagers very happy. The group stays there for the night, immersing themselves in this hidden culture. After spending one night, the four travelers leave the hidden tribe, a place unknown to the rest of the world. When they reach the river, Carl shows Yossi a piece of gold he found there, which delights everyone. This discovery causes their doubts to slowly fade, and they begin to believe that Carl has been telling the truth all along. They continue walking for many days, but their final destination is still estimated to be 3 to 4 days away. At this critical juncture, Marcus's feet become severely injured, reaching a point where he can no longer walk, forcing the group to stop. Carl proposes a solution. He will continue alone to reach the tribe and bring people back to help them. However, Kevin refuses to accept this plan, arguing that they cannot be left alone deep inside the jungle without knowing the way back. Kevin suggests building a raft and traveling along the river instead, which he believes will be easier on Marcus. Carl dislikes this idea but ultimately admits they have no other option, so they decide to travel by river. All four men work together to build the raft, cutting logs, tying them together, and placing their supplies on top before beginning to float down the river. The journey, however, proves to be far from easy. The river, which is calm in the morning, becomes wild and treacherous by evening. Controlling the raft becomes difficult, and Carl insists they stop at the riverbank. Kevin argues wanting to keep going, but they ultimately agree with Carl, acknowledging that he knows the jungle best. They stop at the bank, and Carl says he will go into the jungle to find food, disappearing into the trees. Kevin confides in Yossi, suspecting that Carl does not know how to swim, which is why he was so opposed to traveling further on the raft. Just as they feared, this turns out to be true. When the three of them prepare to head back toward the raft, Carl refuses to get on, stating bluntly that he will not become fish food. He decides to continue on foot and meet them at a rendezvous point marked on their maps. Kevin, however, refuses to walk any further, believing the raft is the safest option. Yossi and Kevin decide that one of them should go with Carl while the two others take the raft. When Yossi tells Marcus about this plan, Marcus insists on going with Carl because his feet have healed enough to walk, but getting them wet again could reopen his wounds. Additionally, he wants to avoid traveling with Kevin after their recent arguments. The decision is set. Yossi and Kevin will take the raft, while Marcus and Carl continue on foot. Marcus waves goodbye to his friends and heads into the jungle with Carl. Meanwhile, Yossi and Kevin push onward down the river, but the water quickly grows dangerous again. Controlling the raft becomes nearly impossible as the current strengthens. Their raft gets pinned against a rock, and the current is so ferocious that they cannot simply abandon it because all their supplies are tied down to it. Losing the raft would mean losing everything they need to survive. Kevin shouts to Yossi that he is going to climb to the shore and pull him up afterward. Kevin manages to reach the land and tries to help Yossi climb up, but before he can reach him, Yossi slips. He falls into the raging water and is instantly swept away by the powerful current. Seconds later, he is gone, carried kilometers downstream in the blink of an eye, leaving Kevin helpless on the shore with nothing he can do. Yossi manages to grab onto a rock far downstream and somehow claws his way out of the river. He is now completely alone in the middle of the Amazon, with no idea where he is, no idea which direction leads to safety, and almost no supplies. Night falls, and Yossi curls up under a tree as the rain starts pouring, signaling the beginning of the rainy season. He survives the night shivering under the branches. At sunrise, he hears the sound of metal clinking and looks toward the river to see his backpack drifting downstream with 2 metal pots tied to it. Risking his life again, he jumps into the river and retrieves it, securing the little he has left. Exhausted, he swallows an energy pill and begins searching for Kevin. He looks everywhere but finds no trace of him, not even knowing which direction the current carried him. He realizes that if he picks the wrong path, he will wander deeper into the jungle and may never return. Rain begins to pour again, and Yossi collapses, hopeless and broken, but he knows he must stay calm and think clearly if he wants to survive. The next morning, he pulls out the map, marks the destination point, and commits to reaching it. However, planning and doing are two different things, and nothing about this journey is easy. For 6 days, he walks endlessly, sleeping on leaves at night and starving because his food supply has completely run out. When he encounters a snake, he kills it and eats it raw, reaching a point where he will eat anything to stay alive. Each day becomes harder, and Yossi grows weaker. One night, he hears a voice calling to him and is overjoyed, thinking Kevin is nearby. He shouts back but sees no one, until Marcus suddenly appears in front of him. Yossi grabs his flashlight to see better, but Marcus vanishes, and Yossi realizes he is hallucinating. Before he can rest again, he senses something lurking nearby, a predator watching him. He lights his lighter and sprays insect repellent into the flame, creating a sudden fireburst that scares the animal away. In the morning, he wakes to find himself surrounded by scorpions, ants, snakes, and other deadly insects. He discovers a leech has burrowed into his skin, causing his face to swell, forcing him to slice his skin open and pull it out. He is exhausted, injured, starving, and losing his strength, but he knows he must keep moving. As he continues his desperate journey, Yossi spots a nest with several bird eggs. He apologizes to the bird before taking one, because after so many days alone in the jungle, he has begun to understand how precious life is. He realizes no one should take another creature's life for their own convenience, but he has no choice. He moves on and soon finds some abandoned human supplies lying around, but there is no person in sight. His feet have been shredded by days of non-stop walking. When he removes his shoes and socks, the pain hits him hard, and for the first time, he truly understands what Marcus must have felt. He whispers an apology to his absent friend, admitting he didn't know how much Marcus was hurting and regretting that he wasn't a good friend. He deeply regrets letting Marcus go with Carl, wishing they had all stayed together, but he knows it is too late as the wheel of time has turned far ahead. The next day, Yossi forces himself to continue. While walking, he spots a fresh boot print on the ground and his heart races. Thinking it might be Kevin, he calls out his name and follows the trail, but soon finds broken eggshells, the same egg he ate the day before. He realizes he has walked in a circle. Realizing he has been going the wrong way destroys him emotionally. but he refuses to give up and decides to follow the river again, no matter what. Meanwhile, on the other side of the jungle, some locals find Kevin collapsed near the riverbank, 150 miles away from where Yossi is. Both of them have now been missing for 14 days. Kevin is barely alive and can't even stand without support, but he is finally safe among humans. After resting for a day, he tells the forest officers that his friend is still out there and they need to find him. The officer responds that searching is pointless because no one survives this jungle for so long, calling Kevin's survival a miracle. But Kevin refuses to back down and pleads until the officers agree to search by helicopter. As Yossi continues his punishing journey, he suddenly hears the sound of helicopter blades and looks up. Overjoyed, he waves a giant red cloth he has with him, but the helicopter is too high and cannot see him through the dense canopy. Eventually flying away, Yossi completely breaks down, knowing that the helicopter came looking for him and is now gone. Kevin is also crushed when they can't find Yossi, but he refuses to give up. When the forest officer tells him he has done enough, Kevin shakes his head, insisting that he needs to try again. He approaches a man with a small boat, the only person who knows the river well enough to navigate it, and begs for help. The man initially refuses, citing that Yossi has been lost for 17 days and no one survives that long. Kevin drops his pride and pleads, saying he has never begged anyone in his life but is begging now. Moved by Kevin's determination, the man finally agrees. Back in the jungle, Yossi is now at his lowest point. Alone, starving, and hallucinating, he feels like he has reached the end. Suddenly, he sees an indigenous girl watching him. Shocked, as she is the first human he has seen in weeks, he gently assures her he won't hurt her. She appears to trust him, and he gives her his blanket so she can sleep while he sits awake under a tree. For the first time in weeks, he doesn't feel completely alone. The next day, he continues walking with her, talking for hours even though she doesn't understand English. Speaking to someone brings him comfort. He finds some rotten food which she refuses, but Yossi eats it out of necessity. When night falls, he wraps his arm around her and whispers that God is with them, but when he looks again, there is no girl. His arm is resting on the dirt. The girl was never real. After so many days in isolation, his mind had begun to break, hallucinating people and conversations to cope with the brutal reality. Barely able to walk, he pushes forward, determined to reach the riverbank. However, the ground gives way, and he falls into a swampy bog. The more he struggles, the deeper he starts sinking. Yossi forces himself to stay completely calm, knowing that movement will only pull him down faster. With great difficulty, he grabs onto a small branch and slowly drags his body out of the swamp. Though his backpack is swallowed by the mud, Yossi is so exhausted that he can no longer walk. He crawls forward inch by inch, feeling his life slipping away. On the way, he sees a branch covered with ants and tightens his belt due to his weight loss. He deliberately lets the dangerous ants crawl all over him, and as they sting, a surge of adrenaline runs through his blood. Through the pain, he forces himself to run, hallucinating everyone he loves: Marcus, the tribal girl, Kevin, and his family telling him not to give up. Pushed by those voices, Yossi runs until he somehow reaches the riverbank and collapses. Gathering his remaining strength, he drags large pieces of wood to arrange a sign, hoping a helicopter might see it. A turtle appears near him, and Yossi picks up a rock to kill it for food but can't bring himself to do it. He lets the turtle go, telling it not to be afraid. Even though he is starving, he spares it and thanks God for the strength to come this far. The next morning, Kevin is shown desperately searching for him and reaches the same riverbank where Yossi had written the sign. However, Kevin doesn't notice the sign and looks around in every direction without seeing Yossi. The boatman tells Kevin they have done everything they could and should return. Heartbroken, they turn the boat around. At that very moment, Yossi, who has been sleeping, wakes up to the sound of the boat engine. With immense difficulty, he stands up and sees Kevin leaving. He lacks the strength to shout, and once again, his chance at survival begins to slip away. But then, Kevin notices him, Yossi standing weak and broken at the river's edge. Kevin quickly brings the boat back and rushes toward him, hugging Yossi tightly, overwhelmed with relief. Their friendship wasn't long, but the bond was deep, and Kevin never gave up. They bring Yossi back to the settlement, where everyone is shocked to see him alive. Kevin's unwavering belief in Yossi's unbreakable will kept him alive. In the end, we are told that Carl and Marcus were never found despite weeks of searching. It was later revealed that authorities had been looking for Carl, a fraud who led travelers into the jungle to tribes that never existed. Kevin eventually went back to his normal life, writing a book about survival, and 10 years later, Yossi returned to the same riverbank where he had almost died. He never abandoned adventure, surviving only because he never gave up and believed you would escape the jungle.